I wasn't even supposed to be out that late. The office party had been winding down for a while, and honestly, I'd only stayed as long as I did because I didn't want to go home early and sit in a quiet house with nothing but leftovers and the echo of what used to be a marriage. The party wasn't anything special. Cheap champagne, coworkers pretending to be best friends for a night, music too loud for anyone to actually talk. I left just after 11. As I walked through the city toward the parking lot, I noticed how loud everything was. The streets buzzed with people spilling out of bars and clubs, glitter on their jackets and plastic 2026 glasses crooked on their faces. I pulled my coat tighter and told myself I was just tired. Just tired, not lonely. I hadn't planned to take that detour. The main road was blocked off for the city's New Year's concert. Some local band? Flashing lights? A stage that took up half the avenue. I tried turning left. Another barricade. Right. Still blocked. A cop waved me through a narrow one-way street that curved past the edge of downtown and into an unfamiliar neighborhood. The kind with upscale apartments I'd never noticed before and storefronts with gold-lettered signs I couldn't read through the condensation on the windows. I didn't even know why I stopped. I guess I was curious. Or maybe something deeper was pulling me. The air was cold, crisp, but not biting. I pulled into a parking spot by a small cafe, the kind that looks like it charges $7 for a black coffee. I figured I'd check the GPS and wait for the crowds to thin out. Then I looked up. I don't know what made me glance toward the rooftop. Maybe I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. Maybe it was the music drifting down from above, soft and melodic, nothing like the bass-thumping chaos on the streets below. I tilted my head just enough to see the string lights twinkling overhead. And there she was, Molly, my wife. Her silhouette at first, then her profile as she turned, laughing at something someone said. She wore that red dress. The one with the low back and thin straps. The one she had said years ago she'd donated because it made her feel too exposed. I hadn't seen it since our 3rd anniversary. I hadn't even thought it still existed. And yet, there it was. There she was. And then I saw the man standing next to her. I didn't recognize him. He was maybe a few inches taller than her, clean-shaven, wearing a navy peacoat. His hand was in hers. Not casually. Not in the way strangers hold hands for a photo or friends do for fun. This was something else. Their fingers were laced together, palms pressed. It was *mate. Familiar. The kind of hand-holding you do when you know the other person. When you want to be known. She leaned into him as he whispered something in her ear, and her face lit up. Not in surprise, but in comfort. She laughed again, head tilted back, and I felt something sharp twist in my chest. It wasn't the laughter itself. It was the sound of it. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in what felt like forever. The one that used to ring out in the kitchen when I burned pancakes, or in bed when I tried to sing along to old R&B songs. I hadn't heard that laugh since, I don't even know. Summer, maybe. Before everything went quiet between us. Before the couch became her usual place to fall asleep, and the I love you-s started to feel like background noise. My first instinct was to deny what I was seeing. Maybe it was someone who looked like her. Maybe I was misreading the body language. Maybe the red dress was a coincidence. But it wasn't. She turned more fully toward him for a second, and the streetlight caught her face. I knew every detail, her cheekbones, the way her hair curled slightly near her temples when she pinned it up, the necklace I gave her on her 30th birthday resting just below her collarbone. That was my wife. And she was holding someone else's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't even lift my phone. I just stood there, on the sidewalk across the street, staring at a version of my life I didn't recognize. I must have stood there for at least 10 minutes. The cold didn't bother me. The crowds thinned behind me as people flooded toward the stage for the countdown, shouting and laughing. I didn't notice. I just watched her. Eventually, they went inside, and I left. I walked back to my car in a haze. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just kept hearing that laugh over and over in my head, like a song on repeat. I drove home without turning on the radio. The city felt too alive for what I was feeling. I needed silence. Needed to process the fact that the woman I'd built my life around, The woman who once cried on our honeymoon because she was so happy it hurt was out with someone else on the night we used to celebrate together. She came home just after 2. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone. My chest was tight, but my face must have looked calm because she didn't even flinch when she saw me. "Oh," she said, slipping off her heels. "You're still up." I nodded. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." She smiled like nothing was wrong. I figured I'd stay out late. Girls' night turned into a whole thing. "Looked like a nice spot," I said, watching her face carefully. She paused just for a second. "Yeah, my friend's brother knew someone who got us into that rooftop place near Market Street." I felt something shift then. Some deep, instinctual part of me catching the slight hesitation in her voice. But she recovered quickly. Too quickly. "Who was the guy?" I asked. She blinked, like she hadn't expected the question. "What guy?" "The one you were holding hands with." That's when her whole posture changed. Not defensive, not yet. Just calculated. Calm. "Oh no, that's just Leah's brother. He was helping me down the stairs. You know how I am in heels." "You were laughing." "Well, yeah. He told a joke." "And you were holding hands." She rolled her eyes, tossing her coat over the chair. "God, Noah, are we really doing this? I tell you I went out for a girls' night, and now I'm on trial because I happened to touch someone's hand?" I didn't say anything. She walked into the kitchen and grabbed a glass of water. Took a long sip like she was washing something down. "You're being paranoid," she said, quieter now. "I swear. It's not what you think. I haven't told you what I think." "Exactly," she said, setting the glass down. "You've already decided." That was her move, turning the blame, making it about my assumptions, my insecurity. And for a second, just a second, I started to question myself. Started to wonder if I really had misread it. If maybe I was just tired. If the distance between us lately was coloring everything I saw. But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded slowly and stood up. "Okay." She looked surprised. "Okay? Yeah," I said. "You're right. It's late." And I went upstairs. But something inside me had already shifted. That moment, her hand in his, the laugh, the dress, the look in her eyes, that was the moment I stopped wondering if something was wrong. That was the moment I knew. After that night, I started seeing everything differently. Not just that moment on the rooftop, that was just the match. The gasoline had been pooling for months, maybe longer. The worst part? I couldn't even pretend I hadn't noticed. I just chose not to believe what I was seeing. Looking back, I realized there were signs. Small, scattered, easy to dismiss when you're still trying to convince yourself that love is enough. That you're enough. Like how she stopped telling me where she was going. Not in a suspicious way at first, just little omissions. Going out with coworkers turned into, "I'll be late." Work dinner became, "I have plans." She used to text when she arrived somewhere. Then it became silence. Then it became excuses. "Sorry, phone died." "No service in the building." Lost track of time. But the phone thing stuck with me. It was always dead or off. Always flipped over, locked tight, password changed. When I asked, she said it was for privacy, not secrecy. "Everyone's so nosy at work," she told me once, laughing like it was no big deal. You wouldn't believe the gossip. And maybe I wouldn't have, if I hadn't caught her flinch once when I reached for her phone to check the weather. Just that split-second tension. The way her fingers **T out to grab it, too fast, too practiced. That wasn't normal. That wasn't how we used to be. Back then, there was nothing between us. No locked doors. No guarded screens. If she left her phone at home, I'd answer it. If I needed her charger, I'd take it from her side of the bed. She used to scroll through photos with me sitting right next to her, laughing, pointing things out, letting me in. Then suddenly it was all hidden, muted, gone. There was the time she said she was visiting her mom who lived 4 hours away. "She's been sick," Molly said, "and I need some time with her." But something felt off. I couldn't explain it, but the way she packed her bag, the perfume she included, The heels, the red lipstick she hadn't worn in forever. It didn't feel like a daughter going to comfort her mother. It felt like a woman preparing for a date. Still, I said nothing. When she came back 2 days later, she was distant. Different. I remember trying to hug her, and she hugged me back, but it felt delayed, like she had to remember how. I asked how her mom was doing, and she mumbled something about feeling better, then changed the subject before I could ask anything else. A week later, I found a receipt in her coat pocket. A beachfront hotel not in her mom's town, not even in the same state. I held it in my hands for 20 minutes, just staring at the date and time. It was the exact weekend she told me she was home taking care of mom. I didn't confront her. I should have. I know that now, but I remember sitting on the edge of our bed, receipt in hand, trying to convince myself there had to be a reason. That maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was from a work trip. Maybe she went with a friend. Maybe I was just insecure. Maybe I didn't want the truth. I just wanted to keep what I thought was true. That night, I put the receipt back exactly where I found it. Another time, she told me she was out with coworkers for drinks. Said they were celebrating someone's promotion. Around 10, I checked her sister's Instagram out of boredom. Her sister had tagged Molly in a post, a story from a concert in Chicago, which was interesting, considering Molly had told me she was still in our city. When I brought it up the next day, she didn't miss a beat. Oh, that was from a while ago. I guess she reposted it or something. Her voice was breezy, confident, as if I was the one getting wires crossed. But the timestamp said live an hour ago. I knew it. She knew it. And I let it go. Because fighting felt exhausting. Because accusing her meant admitting what I didn't want to face. That she had become a stranger sleeping next to me. A stranger who still wore the necklace I gave her but hadn't kissed me like she meant it in months. She had started turning down invites. I'd ask if she wanted to go to dinner with friends, or if she wanted to come to my coworker's birthday. You go, she'd say without looking up. I'm tired. Or, I've got a deadline. She'd always been social. Loved being out with me. Our first few years together, we were a team. People joked we were attached at the hip. But by the end of year 5, I'd go to things alone. People started asking if we were okay. I'd laugh. Just busy, I'd say. Work's been crazy. It became my go-to answer. She also stopped using our shared calendar, a system we used for years to keep track of events, trips, appointments. Suddenly, dates were missing. Or double-booked. She'd say she forgot. Sorry, I meant to add it. But it started feeling intentional. Like she was trying to keep her life compartmentalized. Like she didn't want to be seen. One night, she told me she was flying out for a last-minute work conference. That it was only for one night. She left early the next morning, suitcase packed, blazer pressed. I wished her good luck and made a dumb joke about not letting the free wine turn into bad decisions. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, not the lips, and left. Later that afternoon, I passed by her laptop, still open on the kitchen counter. I don't usually snoop. I've never liked the idea of spying on someone you love. But something made me stop. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was fear. Maybe I already knew and just needed permission. Her inbox was open. A single email caught my eye, flight confirmation. But it wasn't for the city she told me she was flying to. It was to Denver. She had said Seattle. The email included a hotel reservation, for two guests. King suite. Champagne package. I closed the laptop without looking further. I didn't want to see the name. I didn't want it confirmed. Because in that moment, knowing for sure meant I'd have to do something about it. And I wasn't ready. God, I wasn't ready. That night, when she called from her hotel room, I listened as she told me about the keynote speaker and the breakout sessions and how the hotel gym is actually pretty nice. I asked what the weather was like in Seattle. She said it was rainy. Like always. I said nothing. Just listened. And told her I missed her. And she said she missed me too. And somehow, hearing her lie so effortlessly hurt more than any receipt ever could. Still, I stayed quiet. Because I didn't have proof. Not the kind you can hold up and say, look, this is where it broke. At least not yet. But something in me had already begged *n to shift. Like a voice whispering, this isn't working. This isn't love. This isn't someone who wants to be here. And yet, every morning I still made her coffee. Still folded her laundry. Still asked how her day went, knowing she'd only give me half the truth. I kept playing house because admitting the foundation was rotting would mean everything would have to come down. And I wasn't sure I could handle the collapse. But after that rooftop, after seeing her with him, all the old moments came rushing back. Like puzzle pieces falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. It wasn't sudden. She didn't fall out of love all at once. She had been slipping away for a long time. And I had been watching it happen with my eyes wide open. A week after New Year's Eve, Molly told me she'd be late again. She said it casually, the way people do when they expect no resistance. We were standing in the kitchen. I was rinsing a mug, watching the foam slide down the drain. She didn't look at me when she spoke. Just said she had a meeting that ran long, and that she'd probably grab something to eat near the office. I nodded. Not because I believed her, but because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of another excuse. Something in me had gone quiet. The anger, the confusion, the constant questioning. All of it had settled into something colder, clearer. She left. I waited 10 minutes. Then I grabbed my keys. I didn't even tell myself why I was doing it. I just drove. The restaurant she mentioned was downtown, a place we'd been to once for an anniversary. Candlelit tables, exposed brick, the kind of place where you're supposed to linger. I parked across the street and sat there, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel. I waited. 30 minutes passed. Then 45. She never showed. I was about to leave when I saw movement across the street. Through the window of a cafe I hadn't noticed before. And there she was, Molly, sitting at a small table by the window. Across from her sat the same man from the rooftop. There was no mistaking him this time. His hand rested on her knee. Not briefly, not accidentally. It was settled there like it belonged, like it had been there 100 times before. She leaned in as she spoke, her voice low, her face soft. She smiled at him in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. She didn't pull away. I felt strangely calm, like my body had already processed the worst of it and decided to spare me the shock. This wasn't a suspicion anymore. This wasn't circumstantial. This was real, tangible, happening right in front of me. I lifted my phone and took a photo. My hand didn't shake. They stayed another 20 minutes. When they stood up, he helped her into her coat. She touched his arm. They walked out together, laughing quietly, and got into the same car. Before he drove off, he leaned over and kissed her. Not rushed. Not guilty. Comfortable. I went home. I didn't confront her when she came back. Didn't ask where she'd been. Didn't say a word. She told me the same lie as always, that the meeting had run late, that she was exhausted, that we should talk tomorrow. I said okay. The next morning, after she left for work, I sat at the kitchen table with the tablet we hadn't used in months. It had been sitting in a drawer, dead battery, forgotten. I plugged it in more out of habit than intention. When it turned on, her messages started populating the screen. She had never logged out. Their conversation went back months. Photos, voice notes, inside jokes, plans, complaints about me, compliments for him. It was all there, preserved in neat little bubbles like a timeline of my replacement. They talked about weekends away, about how hard it was pretending, about how everything would be easier soon. There were hotel confirmations, *TS of flights, saved listings for apartments in cities I'd never heard her mention. One message stood out, dated 2 weeks before Christmas. Spring in Prague, she'd written. Once everything ends. I sat there for a long time, long enough for the coffee in my mug to go cold, long enough for the house to feel unfamiliar, like I was sitting in someone else's life. I didn't cry. I didn't feel dramatic. I just felt done. When she came home that night, she acted normal, told me about her day, asked what I wanted for dinner, kissed my cheek like it was muscle memory. I watched her, really watched her, and realized how effortless lying had become for her. I didn't argue. didn't raise my voice, because now I had confirmation, not suspicion, not instinct, proof. And once you have that, there's no going back to pretending you don't see it. 2 days after I read the messages, I got an email. It was from someone named Laura. The subject line just said, "Can we talk?" I almost deleted it. I thought it was spam, or maybe one of those scams where someone pretends to know your wife to get your attention. But something about the wording made me pause. I opened it. The message was short. "Hi, I'm Trevor's wife. I think we should compare notes. I found things. You probably did too. Please, I'm not here to fight. I just want the truth. Trevor." That was the name I hadn't known until then. The man from the rooftop, the cafe, the car, the messages. I stared at the screen, rereading the words over and over. I wasn't sure how to feel. Shocked, relieved, horrified. Some strange blend of all three. I replied. We agreed to meet the next day. Neutral spot, daylight, a small coffee shop in a quieter part of the city. When I walked in, I recognized her immediately. She was younger than I expected. Maybe early 30s, dark hair tied back, hands wrapped tight around a mug that hadn't been sipped. She stood when she saw me, and I nodded as we both sat down. Neither of us spoke at first. Then she said, quietly, "I'm sorry." I blinked. "For what?" "For this," she said, gesturing between us. "For having to meet like this. For what they did." I nodded. It was strange. Hearing someone else say it made it feel more real. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "I brought everything." Inside were printed **TS. Hundreds, dates, emails, photos, and at the very back a USB drive. She slid it across the table. "Everything I found," she said. "I thought you should have it too." I didn't touch it. Not yet. "How long?" I asked. She exhaled. "Farther back than I thought. A little over a year, I think. The messages go back that far." At first I thought it was emotional. Just inappropriate flirting. Then I kept digging. I looked at her. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. Not anymore. She'd already done that part. I found receipts, hotel stays, flights. One time they pretended to be on different work trips and met in Miami. He told me he was in Ohio. I swallowed. She told me she was in Seattle. She was in Denver. Laura gave a bitter smile. "They're good at that." She reached into the folder again and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a printout of a text from Molly. "She sent this to Trevor in October," she said. "I found it when I backed up his phone." I unfolded it and read. "He still thinks I'm trying. He's even getting a ring. I'm not in this marriage anymore." I stared at the words, the font, the timestamp. My throat felt tight. "She knew," I said. "She knew exactly what she was doing." Laura nodded slowly. "They both did." We sat in silence for a while. Around us, people were laughing, sipping lattes, tapping away on laptops like the world wasn't splitting open in two quiet corners of the cafe. "I don't know what I was expecting," I finally said. "When I saw them on New Year's, part of me still thought maybe it wasn't what it looked like. I wanted her to say something that made it all go away." "She won't," Laura said. "She'll lie until the last second. Trevor too." I looked at her. "Are you divorcing him?" She nodded. "Already filed. This isn't salvageable. Not for me." "Same." She slid the flash drive closer. "Everything is on here. Their travel confirmations, hotel bookings, messages, even a few voice recordings. I had a friend who does digital recovery. Got some deleted stuff off his phone." I picked it up. It felt heavier than it should have, like holding a box of matches next to a building you once built by hand. "I don't even feel angry," I said. "Not the way I thought I would." "That comes later," she replied. "First it's numb. Then it burns." I didn't know what to say to that. Before we left, she paused at the door. "If you ever want to share updates or just not be in it alone, here's my number," she said, writing it down. "I don't know what's ahead, but I know neither of us deserved this." I nodded. "Thank you." We walked out in opposite directions. When I got home, the house felt colder. I didn't open the flash drive right away. I set it on the table and just looked at it. Later that night, Molly walked in, smiling like everything was normal. "How was your day?" she asked, dropping her bag by the door. I looked at her for a long moment, long enough for her smile to falter. "Fine," I said. She moved into the kitchen, humming. I heard her open the fridge, pour herself a drink. As if the world hadn't shifted beneath her feet. As if I didn't now hold in my hands the entire blueprint of her betrayal. She walked past me with her glass and kissed the top of my head. I didn't flinch, didn't say a word. But the truth was already in motion. I thought Molly would try to explain. I thought maybe she'd panic, or deny it again, or go silent like people do when they're cornered. But I underestimated her. She didn't play defense. She went on the attack. It started the day after she noticed the tablet was missing from the drawer. I hadn't even hidden it, just left it face down on the kitchen table, the way you do with something you're no longer afraid to be seen. She walked in from work, saw it, and froze. Her eyes flicked from the tablet to me, and something shifted in her face, like a mask sliding into place. Cold, composed. "We need to talk," she said. Not angry, not scared, just calm, like she was ready to deliver a speech. I nodded, sat back in the chair. "Go ahead." She didn't even hesitate. "I know you've been looking through my messages." She said it like she'd caught me doing something wrong. "I know you've been going through my stuff, my tablet, probably my email too. That's a violation, Noah. A violation." I stared at her. She folded her arms. "If you had questions, you could have come to me directly." I didn't answer, because in that moment, I realized exactly what she was doing, and what she was about to do next. She wasn't going to apologize. She was going to rewrite the story. "I know things have been distant between us," she continued, her voice softening. "I've been hurting too, you know. You've been so cold, so unavailable. For months, I've been trying, but it's like you stopped seeing me." I raised an eyebrow. "So that's why you planned a trip to Prague behind my back?" Her jaw tightened. "You had access to things that weren't meant for you. And yet they were very revealing." She didn't blink. "Trevor was there for me when you weren't." There it was. The pivot. It wasn't cheating. It was coping. It wasn't betrayal. It was reaction. "You were emotionally unavailable," she said, voice rising just enough to sound impassioned. "You shut down." I felt alone in this house, like I was living with a stranger. "No," I said quietly. "You were visiting a stranger. You were living with a husband." Her lips pressed into a line. For a second, I saw the mask slip. The cornered animal. But then she caught herself. And that night she made her move. Not in the house. Not in person. But online. It started with an Instagram post. A black and white photo of her at the beach, old photo, filtered to look recent. Caption: "Sometimes we don't even realize how lost we were until we start to come home to ourselves." Then the hashtags. Hashtag healing, hashtag moving forward, hashtag toxic relationships, hashtag know your worth. I stared at my phone in disbelief. She hadn't even left yet. But in her mind, she was already the survivor of something. Over the next few days, it snowballed. A post about emotional exhaustion. A story about finding the courage to speak your truth. A blurry photo of her and Trevor at an outdoor cafe. Faces half turned, as if accidentally caught mid-laugh. Caption: "Real love feels like peace." She never mentioned me by name. She didn't have to. Mutual friends started reaching out. Some gently, "Hey, just checking in. Saw Molly's post. Everything okay?" Some not so gently, "Wow, didn't know things were that bad between you two." I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't defend myself. Let them talk. Let her spin whatever version she needed to keep herself from looking like the villain. The more I stayed silent, the louder she got. She posted a long thread about narcissistic patterns and feeling invisible in your own home. Talked about being trapped in a one-sided marriage. Referenced years of silence. Years? We were laughing over takeout 5 months ago. But none of that mattered now. She'd picked her narrative. And she wasn't just telling it. She was living in it. One afternoon, I got a message from a friend we'd both known since college. Jess said, "I know this is none of my business, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't know what really happened between you two, but I always saw how much you loved her. That counts for something. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." That one stung a little more. Jess wasn't the type to jump on bandwagons. She must have been really convinced. And again, I said nothing, because part of me didn't care what people thought anymore. And the other part knew the truth would speak for itself soon enough. Molly kept pushing. She told friends I'd become controlling, that I watched her every move, that I didn't support her growth. Growth? Is that what she called cheating? She claimed I was the one who started pulling away, that I hadn't touched her in months, that I made her feel undesirable. She didn't mention the late-night calls with Trevor, the secret hotel rooms, the way she told him I was too boring to notice anything, the way she laughed at my text messages when she **t them. She left all that out. Selective history. It was like she'd already erased who she used to be, the woman who once called me her best friend, the woman who told me she felt safe with me, the woman who cried when we moved into our first apartment, because it finally felt like a real home. Now she was the one who had survived me. I stayed quiet and gave the flash drive to my lawyer. That was the only statement I made. We met once more before everything went to court. A mediation attempt. She walked in wearing all black, a sharp blazer, high boots, hair pulled back into a perfect knot. No tears, no softness, just performance. Like she was trying out for the role of the wronged woman in front of an imaginary jury. The mediator introduced us, asked if we wanted to make statements. She went first. Her voice trembled just enough to sound rehearsed. She talked about emotional abandonment, about how I dismissed her concerns, how I refused to grow with her. She never said the word cheated. Not once. Not even when the mediator asked directly. "I did seek comfort elsewhere," she said, eyes glassy. "But only after exhausting every effort to save what we had." She said that with a straight face. I almost laughed. When it was my turn, I didn't bring up the affair. I didn't list the messages or play the recordings. I simply slid a printed copy of the Prague itinerary across the table. I was going to surprise her with a trip, I said. She was planning to take the same one, just with someone else. And then I let the silence speak. Because nothing says more than quiet when the truth is loud. In court, her version unraveled fast. The texts, GPS logs, emails, hotel receipts, they weren't just evidence, they were a timeline. Her story of emotional abandonment couldn't stand against digital proof. The judge saw through it. Fast. Since I'd paid most expenses, rent, car, her grad school, and had clear evidence of infidelity, the ruling was swift. No alimony, no car, no part of the apartment. She asked to keep the couch. He said no. She walked out shell-shocked, not crying, just stunned, like she'd built a future on something she assumed couldn't fall apart. And now it had, completely. A month later, Laura called. Trevor lost his job. Company card misuse during their trips. His accounts froze. He vanished. Molly was left with nothing. She tried to save face online at first. Healing, starting fresh. But people knew. A coworker filed a complaint about the affair. She lost her job. Then her apartment. Eventually, she sent one text. "I miss how safe it felt with you." I stared at it. Didn't reply. Because it wasn't just about safety. It was about trust. And peace. And finally, I had both. Without her,